One might say that in general, women do not make such a fuss. They seize the occasion without much questioning. They do, using their pride and sensuality. But it is also true that they bury in the secret of their hearts many disappointments, humiliations, regrets, and grievances, and that affects our temperament all the time. The man will almost surely get the benefit of pleasure from a more or less unsuccessful affair. The woman might well not profit from it at all. Even if indifferent, she politely lends herself to lovemaking. We don't get the same kind of instant satisfaction. And when we date a man, often, unless we really like him, it's a waste of time and money and effort that is just not worth it. And I feel like men don't understand that. Men almost always get something from it. If only the company of someone who looks amazing, who has spent hours taking care of herself, who smells good. We don't get that. We get a sweaty guy who's come to have a beer, which we don't even care to have. We have had to go there in our heels, in all of our delicate clothing. It takes so much fucking time and money. It's just not worth it for us. If she does not reach arousal, then she feels had, deceived. If she is satisfied, she will want to hold on to her lover for a longer time. She is rarely completely sincere when she claims to envisage nothing more than a short-term adventure, just for her pleasure. Because pleasure, far from freeing her, binds her. So between men and women, there's a really different response to pleasure. Men feel freedom once they felt pleasure. Women feel attachment. It's far more rare to hear a woman talk good-naturedly about a former lover than a man about his mistress. I understand this, but I think when you get a little bit older and things are more clear to you, like all of this stuff has been clear to me for a while now. So I don't feel deceived by my ex-boyfriends, and I actually get on really well with them, but because I know what I'm getting into, and I know how they feel, and I know how we stand. When I was even at the age of 22, I felt just terrible. I felt so hurt. Even just something as simple as the man not calling you every day, I felt so hurt. Whereas now it's like, please don't call me, just give me some space. The nature of a woman's eroticism and the difficulties of a free sexual life push the woman towards monogamy. That's it. It's not that we want to, it's just we're forced to. What is the alternative? To waste our youth in not getting the life that we need? Because we only have like 10 years to get the life that we want. So we need to do everything we can in that time span. We can't wait like men do. It's not that we want to, it's a pain in the ass. Monogamous, it's bullshit. But it's just society. Nonetheless, a marriage is far less easily reconciled with a career for a woman than for a man. The husband may suggest that she gives up her career when the time comes for having children and having a home. But if she gives in, she once again becomes a slave. If she refuses, she condemns herself to a withering solitude. So if we choose career over being with the man in the home and all this stuff, we are somehow condemning ourselves to solitude. And it's much harder for us to get company further down the road. We have to secure the company beforehand. The self-sufficient wife frees her husband from the conjugal slavery that was the price of her own, which is really good for men, because by women having a career, having their own money, they don't depend on the husband, so the husband can feel more free, which I know that a lot of men don't like, especially nowadays anymore, women depending on them. Most of the time, it is still the woman who pays the price for harmony at home. It seems natural to the man that she run the house and oversee the care and raising of the children. The woman herself believes that her personal life does not dispense her from the duties she assumed in marrying. She does not want her husband to be deprived of the advantages he would have in marrying a real woman who has the time to do all of that stuff. She wants to be elegant, a good housekeeper, a devoted mother, like wives traditionally are. And there is something that I've been thinking about today as I was doing laundry, because I am in two minds about this. I do really think that, at least for me, and I think probably for men too, if they had been raised that way, it's so nice to do stuff in your home. Maybe not every day, but to do it every once in a while, just taking care of your space. Your space is your energy. So by you, with your own hands, having that tenderness towards cleaning your home, having everything tidy, your space, getting your own clothes physically, getting your body, your hands on them, doing that little sacrifice, it's almost meditative, and it's nice to go outside to see how your clothes are when they're wet. You just take care of them so much more than if you just delegate and don't even consider or think about any of these activities. I feel like these activities are nice to be done to an extent. I think it's part of a simple way of living. You know, if I lived alone in a farm, which is, I think, the objective for all of us someday, it's like I would want to be eating food from my own, that I growed on my earth. I would like to be doing everything myself. I would like to subsist, and I would also like to do most of my chores. I feel like that gets me in connection with who I am, and I appreciate things more. But anyway, for the woman doing both the home and the career, it easily becomes overwhelming. Consideration for her partner and fidelity to herself insists on fulfilling every aspect of the destiny of the woman. This includes ourselves as self, our career, our ultimate destiny and goals, and ourselves as femininity. She will take charge of his worries, the husband's worries. She will participate in his successes. Taught to respect male superiority, she may still believe that man takes first place, and sometimes she fears that claiming it would ruin her family. And this is still happening, maybe not to such an extent, but it's still happening. There is nonetheless one advantage that woman can gain from her very inferiority. She does not feel guilty towards him. It is not up to her to compensate for social injustice. A man of goodwill feels it is his duty to help women because he is more favored than they are. And this is kind of the gallantry that we speak of all the time, and I think this is really nice. And I do find this dynamic between men and women, where the woman is slightly inferior and has all these classical qualities of the girl, and the man helps her. I do like that. The woman who achieves a virile independence has the great privilege of dealing sexually with autonomous and active individuals. So this is another benefit of women. If we have a career and we are successful, then we can deal with individuals, men, who are also independent and successful, whereas the man cannot always, because the man encounters very often women, obviously, because he's a man. So women are not so often independent, especially when men meet them, because very often it's an older man with a younger woman and he helps her get her career off the ground. It's just a really usual thing that's happening because of what I mentioned earlier. So our advantage is that when we look for someone sexually, we know that we're going to find someone who can already take care of themselves, whereas the man doesn't find somebody who can take care of themselves a lot of the time. She will find someone who will not play a parasite's role in her life, who will not bind her by her weaknesses and the demands of their needs. But women who know how to create a free relation with their partners are in truth rare. They themselves forge the chains with which men do not wish to burden them. They adopt towards their partner the attitude of the woman in love. And this is how women are creating their own prison, because we get it into our heads that we are going to be in love, and in love has all of these manifestations, all of these acts that we put on of the damsel in distress. The man has to cope with that, and we create it for ourselves because we want to, because we enjoy it, because it gives us more pleasure to fantasize, to idealize the man, to put him on a pedestal. We love it, and we keep doing it, so we keep perpetuating this stuff. For 20 years of waiting, dreaming, and hoping, the young girl has embraced the myth of the liberating hero and savior. Independence won through work is not enough to abolish her desire for a glorious abdication. It's so true. To be independent through your work, that doesn't feed you enough to not also want this concept of there's this hero that's gonna come and save me and take me somewhere else and liberate me. She would have had to be brought exactly like a boy, brought up, to be able to comfortably overcome teenage narcissism. But in her adult life, she perpetuates this cult of self towards which her whole youth has predisposed her. She uses the merits of her professional success to enrich her image. She needs a gaze from above to reveal and consecrate her worth. So even if she's successful in her career, what is she using that success for? For her image, for her to feel like a woman. At times, she entirely renounces her autonomy. She's no more than a woman in love. She often tries conciliation, but adoring love, the love of abdication, of just giving yourself, because women, we give ourselves. Our loyalty knows no bounds, and we love it. We love, and we brag about it, how loyal women can be. It takes up all our thoughts, all instants. It is obsessive, tyrannical. If she encounters a professional disappointment, the woman passionately seeks refuge in love. Not sex, but love. The man will go to relax, as in just have sex, whereas the woman, she will want to fall in love. And then she can forget all the bad stuff. Generally, she becomes irritated by the kind of life that keeps her from the royal road of the great love. So generally, that is the thing that we talk about. That we think about. But I'm just thinking, when you meet up with your girlfriends, you know how men often talk about their work, their careers. I am a bit like that too, because I'm very passionate about my career, and I'd rather just talk about myself, honestly. I just want to talk about my enterprises. But most women, and I find it a little irritating because I just don't give a fuck, most women will meet up and the first thing is, who are you seeing? Who have you been seeing? I mean, of course I am curious about these things as well, and I talk about boys and I think about boys, but it is not my priority in life. And so many women are just absolutely not interested in your career or professional advances or merits. They just are interested. If you don't have that partner, then you're not successful. Whatever it is that you're doing, you haven't done anything of value. If you haven't slept with a man, dated a man, are in a relationship with a man, that is our ultimate kind of goal as the female community, is being with men. No wonder our situation. In the office, okay, so this is really funny. A woman who worked 10 years ago for a political magazine run by a woman told me that in the office, people talked rarely about politics, but incessantly about love. Same thing I've just said. One would complain that she was loved only for her body, ignoring her fine intelligence. Another would whine that she was always appreciated for her mind and nobody appreciated her charms. Here, for the woman to be in love like a man, without putting her very being into question, she would have to think herself his equal and be his equal concretely. She would have to commit herself with the same decisiveness to her enterprises. And as we will see, this is still not common. There is one female function that is still almost impossible to undertake in complete freedom, and that is motherhood. Super complicated subject. The woman can refuse it thanks to birth control, but as I have said, I don't like birth control and I don't recommend it on anybody. Birth control, let me say it again, what it does is it messes with your hormones. Artificially, it messes with your hormones so that you can't get pregnant. I am sure that if it was up to women scientists, it would not have passed safety tests because it's fatal. Like, it's fatal. Most of the time, women have trouble later with their hormones. And the hormones control not just your sexuality, but every function in your body. Every function in your body. It's a really big thing. It shouldn't be just granted freely like it is. It's a risk, and you should sign a consentment saying, if I die, like if I start getting really serious health issues after using this stuff, I am responsible, kind of, for us to know what we're getting into. Because teenage women are getting into birth control. At least we have condoms, you know. When I speak of birth control, I always think about hormones and the pill, but I forget that there's also condoms. I just don't like condoms. It is rare for a woman to become a mother without accepting the chains of marriage or lowering herself. Totally true, because to be a mother, you kind of need a partner, or you want, because you want also your child to have a father, and it's just something that we have to put up with. It's not that we want it, it's something that we put up with. She can continue to work only by abandoning the child to her parents, friends, servants. She has to choose between sterility, often experienced as a painful frustration, and burdens hardly compatible with a career. Thus, the independent woman today is divided between her professional interests and the concerns of her sexual vocation. If she finds balance, it's at the price of concessions, sacrifices, and juggling that keep her in constant tension. It's so complicated to juggle everything, to have to think that you have a limited amount of time to make these decisions, which you absolutely do not want to make so early. Then if you have a child, you have all these consequences. If you don't have a child, you also have all these consequences. Whatever you do, you are blamed by men who are telling that women want to, lie to them so that they can bind them into marriage. It's like, dude, you don't have any of these problems. Give me a break. So no wonder that with all of this constant tension, more than in physiological facts, it is here that one must seek the reason for the nervousness and fragility often observed in women. It's difficult to decide how much woman's physical makeup in itself represents a handicap. So it's difficult to decide whether it is all of these circumstances together that are handicapping us. And I believe they are, because just our natural situation is a huge handicap. And we need help and we need understanding. We don't need hostility on top of everything. And then she goes about how women who are successful experience less trauma related to their femininity. So, for example, the question is, can you be a really successful woman if you're spending 2 days a month in bed because of your period, because you're feeling so shit, and even other days where because of your several, motherhood and all this stuff, is that the reason why you're not being successful? And Simone believes that Most ailments and illnesses that weigh women down have psychic causes. I do also believe that most illnesses have psychic causes, and that if you are really successful, it kind of goes the other way around. If you are really successful, then you don't get all these sicknesses and stuff. And she says that this is in fact what gynecologists have said, that it is psychological. Women are constantly overwhelmed by the psychological tension that I have spoken about because of all of the tasks that they take on and the contradictions that they struggle against. This does not mean that their illnesses are imaginary. They are real and devouring. But the situation does not depend on the body. It is the body that depends on the situation. So she says, and I agree, that work will strongly reinforce her physical balance. When we judge the professional accomplishments of women, we must not lose sight of all of these facts. So we have to take into account all of the situation, the causes, the consequences, the contradictions, the weaknesses, when you analyze a woman and what she has done professionally. The woman embarks on a career in the context of a highly problematic situation, subjugated still by the burdens traditionally implied by her femininity. So from the onset, whatever you do, your context where you're developing yourself and starting your career is so complex, so problematic, so against you, that that in itself makes it so hard to advance. And the objective circumstances, as for everybody, they're always hard because you are a newcomer trying to make your way in a hostile society, or at least a mistrustful society. The woman finds herself in a state of inferiority during her period of apprenticeship. It's rare for the woman to be able to make full use of her possibilities because she's doing all this other woman stuff. And during the time where they are meant to develop their career, they are handicapped by the conflicts that I have discussed earlier and that reach the greatest intensity between the ages of 18 and 30, exactly when her professional future is determined. So in the time where our career and professional future is set, we are at the same time dealing with the fact that we have to find a mate, decide if we want to be mothers, build a home, all of this stuff that men don't have to do yet. And you have to do all of this stuff when you are so young that you don't really know how to do it. Because that's another thing. It's not just that you have to do it faster. It's not just that you have to do it earlier before still building a career. So like, how do you compatibilize that? You don't have the money, but you need to do all this stuff before. But at the same time, you are a child. So how can you do all this stuff at the same time and be making these decisions when you are immature? I mean, you would never expect a guy of 25. You would never expect the standards that you expect of women, ever. Whether the woman lives with her family or not, they will impose duties and chores on her and curtail her freedom. She herself is still profoundly marked by her upbringing. Sometimes she rejects her femininity. She hesitates between homosexuality or provocative attitude. She dresses badly, she dresses like a man. She wastes a lot of time in defiance, scenes, and anger because, you know, we just have to let it out. And that is such a waste of time for us as well, on top of everything else. More often, she wants, on the contrary, to assert her femininity. She dresses up, she goes out, she's in love. In all cases, she questions herself, She is agitated and scattered. She does not commit herself entirely to her enterprise. And that is so true. Women in general, women's activities, even women at work, are so scattered because we have all this other stuff in our mind that just is heavy and it weighs on us. And I see this now that I am going on a bicycle for the first time as an adult, just to see how men do things. It's so easy. They don't have any other preoccupation. They decide what they're doing, for example, going on their bicycle that day. And everything they do is so carefully explained to them, so slowly. Or in the gym, for example, in my Pilates class, the man needs so much more help and so many more instructions. It's like women, we just find our way because we don't have time. We're just like crazy, going all directions. Everything is expected from us, so we're used to just making do however we can. The man is so much more fragile in a lot of ways. He needs that support and he needs things to be explained very slowly for him to get it. Women get it so much quicker. It's kind of calming to be in a man's world because everything is so easy. You cannot imagine. I mean, it's just so comforting, so stable. There's such a stable energy. In women, we're always one step ahead. We can never win. We're used to never winning. And so we're used to never winning, and we're always trying to push ourselves to the extent where we're never comfortable anywhere we are. We always feel like we're lacking, like we're not good enough, like we're not doing enough. What is extremely demoralizing for the woman trying to be self-sufficient in the existence of other women is that a lot of the times, and this is funny because this is happening nowadays a lot, women who come from the same kind of situation, if one of them has the help of a man earlier on, her situation will change like that. And that's really demoralizing to women around her because we see all the time women, we see models or influencers, and they just live so much better, and it's because they have gotten luck or help. It's not always through work. Women don't always reach a better situation just through hard work. A lot of it is luck, much more than with men. With men, it's kind of like, if you do this job, you will be rich, you will be successful. With women, not really. We have other things we need to do at the same time. The man might resent privileged people, but he feels solidarity with his class on the whole. Those who begin with an equal footing, equal chances, they arrive at approximately the same standard of living. But women in similar situations have greatly differing fortunes because of man's mediation. So it really greatly depends on what men have gone into your life. It is men that take you somewhere. As a woman, as a young woman especially, when you're still really not able to do much by yourself. So the woman who chooses a professional career, she feels like she is arbitrarily condemning herself to the most difficult path. Therefore, there's a big difference between the man who works because he is obeying to an imperious necessity and the woman who works, but she constantly has to renew her decision because she goes forward, not with her eye fixed forward, but letting her attention wander all around her because she's thinking, should I have done this another way? You know, I don't have a lot of time to reach this position because then I lose my youth and then whatever. So she doesn't put everything she has. She can't invest in the same way because she never knows when it's the right time. And on top of everything, expectations have gone younger and younger. So now I remember by the time I was 15, I already felt like such a failure because I felt like there's these other women around me who are famous and successful and all this stuff, and I haven't done shit. And I already, at that age, I felt like it was really not worth to invest in my future. I mean, really, this is what we're up against. whereas men have so much more. They have a timeline that is gradual and in order. Women, it's like, we don't know, we're waiting for this lottery to come to us much of the time. And a lot of the time you don't take risks because you feel like the time has already passed to take those risks. The farther she advances, the more she renounces her other chances. So, you know, the further you want to go in your career, for example, the more you are renouncing to be a mother, or at least you will never be a mother in that period of your life, even if you can be later, but you will never be a young mother if you decide that you need to build your career when you're young. As cerebral women, she will either displease men in general or humiliate them by being too dazzling a success. So even if we're successful, we can't win. She will apply all the more to appear elegant and frivolous, but that will also hold herself back. So as a successful woman, because you also want to fulfill your femininity, you try so much harder to appear as a woman, as female as possible, and that also holds you back, and that also takes a lot of money and time and all that stuff. Her femininity leads her to doubt her professional opportunities. Resigning herself to inequality a lot of the time, she exacerbates it. And this is what happens a lot of the time, that because we are unequal or we are inferior, we go for it. We're like, okay, I'm gonna be a slave, I'm gonna be the best slave, you know? So this is how we make life harder for ourselves. And men are honestly, a lot of the time, very confused by how complicated we make things. But we make things so complicated for this reason, because if that is what we are, then we want to be it as good as we can. She decides to use her strength sparingly. She persuades herself that her chances of success are limited. She does not experience rich moments where study and amusement merge, because we just feel a lot of the time like studying is a waste of time and we're not getting where we have to get in the home department if we invest too much time in professional stuff. Overwhelmed by the thanklessness of her chores, she feels less and less able to carry them out, because it's overwhelming, all the tasks that we have to do that are not recognized, but we still have to do them, and we get nothing in exchange for them. Because of this defeatist attitude, the woman easily settles for a mediocre success. She is bothered, and rightly so, by the idea that no one has confidence in her. In general, the superior caste, i.e. men, is hostile to the parvenus of the inferior caste. Whites will not go to see a black doctor. Men don't go to see a woman doctor. And, even more so, individuals from the lower caste, imbued with the feeling of their generic inferiority, and often full of resentment of someone who has prevailed over destiny, will also turn to the masters. So the master class, the superior men, they don't want to be going to a female doctor. Like, they don't feel like they can trust us either to take orders from or to attend them, really. They think that they do it better. And we as women, because we are the inferior ones, and we believe that we are inferior so deeply, we also don't want to go to women because, you know, they are inferior. So we also want to go to the superior ones, partly because they're superior, and partly because we're even jealous of other inferior people like us who have achieved that kind of success. And this happens all the time. And I believe that this is the cause of a lot of jealousy amongst women. It's kind of like we don't want other women to be happy. We're not happy, and we don't want others to be happy either. We don't want to support them, because if we support other women, then they're going to be better off than us. And then that's kind of like, you know, and that is hindering us so badly. I'm not like that, by the way, but I have to stop myself. Like, I get thoughts in my brain that I have to push aside all the time when it comes to judging other people. And I do push them because I really don't care, but they come to you. I think these thoughts are in the air. As you know, thoughts don't really come from our brain. Thoughts are in the air. If you go somewhere where there's a good energy, you don't get these negative thoughts. I never associate myself with my thoughts, especially if they're negative. It's a really dangerous thing to do. The woman, okay, so this is what I'm saying still. Most women, steeped in the adoration of the male, avidly seek him in the doctor, lawyer, office manager. So we adore males so much that we want males. She will always be somewhat condescending because of our situation. To be a woman is, if not a defect, at least a peculiarity. The woman must ceaselessly earn a confidence that's not initially granted to her. I find this in the professional world all the time. You have to be proving yourself all the time just because you're a woman. At the outset, she is suspect. She has to prove herself. The initial inferiority complex most usually leads to the defensive reaction of an exaggerated affectation of authority. So if people think that you're inferior, and you know that they think so, that often leads you to be defensive towards it and to exaggerate even more being authority and trying to be more dominating because you're trying to compensate for that. And that's really annoying, and you see that a lot in women or other people who feel inferior. They will just not be very friendly. And we don't like that either, so we don't go to them. And we don't like them to be in positions of power because that's how they behave. We need to be really mindful of these things and aware to be able to change them and feel much more relaxed as an authority figure. Their life as a whole disposes them more to seduce than to command. Conscious of this, the woman doctor uses a low voice, a decisive tone, but then she does not have the cheerful simplicity that is so seductive in the confident doctor. The man is used to being imposing. His clients believe in his competence, so he can let himself go. He is sure to impress. The woman does not inspire the same feeling of security. She stiffens, exaggerates, overdoes it. So when the man is in a position of authority, he feels like he belongs there. He's very natural about it. When the woman is in that position where she has to give orders or she has to dominate in some sense, she stiffens because she's uncomfortable in that position. She doesn't feel deeply inside, she doesn't feel like she deserves it. She feels like people are judging her, like people don't really believe her, and that causes that reaction that only sets her back. The greatest failure a lack of self-assurance brings about is that the subject cannot forget himself. And that is the biggest handicap on women. We can't forget ourselves. Men can forget themselves, and we see that especially. I see it in the arts a lot. I don't like women singers, most of them. I find just the amount of affectation. It's just really bad taste. For a trained singer, you don't do that. That kind of show-off attitude, I find it really grating. The woman has a tendency to attach too much importance to minor failures and modest successes. She either gets discouraged or she swells with vanity. When success is expected, it is welcomed with simplicity. So for the man who is successful, he welcomes it with simplicity and just goes on, whereas the woman, she's either really aggravated by the lack of success or she just goes so full of herself when she has any success. It becomes an intoxicating triumph if one doubted obtaining the success. This part, I'm gonna stop for a moment because this next part is about artists, which is my category, and I wanna be fully refreshed for it. I'm gonna redo my lipstick, I think. I'm back. Did you miss me? Why is this in my kitchen? What do we prefer, the kitchen or the mess? Let's choose the mess. Always choose the mess. Okay, this next part is about the woman artist. There is one category of woman to whom these remarks do not apply because their careers, far from harming the affirmation of their femininity, reinforce it. And I feel so thankful, so grateful towards art for this, because I feel like art and the expression, it makes me feel so much more like a woman, and I can really be myself, and it's the only place where I can really be myself. Through artistic expression, they seek to go beyond the very given they constitute. Actresses, dancers, and singers. For 3 centuries, they have almost been the only ones to possess concrete independence in society, and today they still hold a privileged place in it. That is when people want to pay you, which is not very often, but okay. In the past, actresses were cursed by the church. Blah, blah, blah. Like courtesans, they are often involved in seduction. They spend much of their days in the company of men. This is still true. But as they earn their living themselves, finding the meaning of their existence in their work, they escape men's yoke. However, I have to say that it is mostly men who are going to pay you and who are going to give you a contract. So no, you still have to beg to men. The great advantage is that their professional successes contribute, as for males, to their sexual worth. And this is true. And I guess I've never been in not this situation, so I don't know how it is for others, because for me, it's true that in my profession, everything that I do has made me feel really sexually valuable. And not just because I've been taking pictures, like even if it was just my voice, it would still kind of contribute to my sexuality. By realizing themselves as human beings, they accomplish themselves as women. They are not torn between contradictory aspirations. On the contrary, they find in their jobs a justification for their narcissism. This is true. Clothes, beauty care, and charm are part of their professional duties. A woman infatuated with her image finds great satisfaction in doing something simply by exhibiting what she is. So true. And this exhibition requires sufficient amounts of both artifice and study if it is going to be a substitute for action. That is true, and nowadays there's another category, which is the model and the influencer. And they are, me and my friends joke a lot about this because this is really bad, but we say there's kind of like a pyramid where the singer is the most important, and then the actress doesn't do as much because she doesn't create as much, and then the model, she doesn't create anything. So it's also crazier, and you get more stable as you get near the singer because the singer is the creator, so we forget ourselves a little bit more because we're creating stuff rather than just showing ourselves. But this is still all very true. These rare advantages also conceal traps. Instead of integrating her narcissism and the sexual freedom she enjoys in her artistic life, the actress often falls into self-worship or seduction. I have already spoken of this, pseudo-artists who seek only to make a name for themselves, i.e. celebrity, reality, celebrity influencers kind of people. In the cinema or theater, the comfort of masculine support is still very tempting compared to the risks of a career and the harshness of any real work. To be honest, we completely depend on men because they are the ones who are in the positions of power, so they are the only ones who are going to give you anything, and even your colleagues, they're all men, because female singers, we never work with other female singers, we work with musicians, and most of them are men, or producers, most of them are men. The desire for a feminine destiny, a husband, a home, children, and the spell of love are not always easily reconcilable with the desire to succeed. But above all, the admiration she feels for herself limits the actress' talent in many cases. She deludes herself as to the value of her mere presence, to the extent that serious work seems useless to her. This is so true. You get so caught up on taking pictures and just exhibiting yourself, and then you don't get any actual work done, and then you look back and you're like, what have I done? And it's just all these people constantly praising you for your looks and constantly getting invited to free dinners and free clubs and free everything. And you just get really, it's a waste of time, because even though it's free, time is money. So that's another thing to think about. Girls, don't get sucked into free stuff or things that people are doing for you or inviting you to. It's your time. She prefers to place herself in the limelight and sacrifices the character. She does not have the generosity to forget herself. Forgetting myself is the hardest thing I can do. It's rare when a woman overcomes these risks and make the person the instrument of their art, instead of seeing in art a servant of their person. In her private life, she will exaggerate all her narcissistic defects. She will appear vain, touchy, and a phony, and she will treat the whole world as a stage. This is not so true of myself, but I do like to put the act on, you know, but I don't sincerely believe it. I'm very aware of this stuff. Women's situation encourages her to seek salvation in literature and in art. We're going to read the next few pages together because I haven't finished this part, but I've read it before, so I should really remember. A woman's situation encourages her to seek salvation in literature and in art. Living on the margin of the masculine world, she does not grasp it in its universal guise, but through a particular vision. For her, it is not a group of implements and concepts, but a source of feelings and emotions. She can only recover her being in the realm of imagination. This makes me think a lot of authors like Virginia Woolf, and I'm sure there's many others that are not so famous, but she's a lot like this. You can tell in a lot of women writers that they have a lot to protest about because of their nature, because it's not the world that they want. They don't feel like they belong in it. They have a different way of dealing with it. Which she is trying to create a world other than the one in which she cannot succeed in reaching herself. She needs to express herself. So it's very common for women to pour out her feelings in conversations, letters, and diaries, because she needs to constantly digest, talk about, consider all these contradictions that we're speaking on. This is a brilliant paragraph, and I want to make sure that I say it properly. The very circumstances that orient the woman towards creation also constitute obstacles she will often be unable to overcome. When she decides to paint or write, to fill the emptiness of her days, to express herself, these paintings and essays are treated as ladies' work, as hobbies, and she will devote little time or care to them. So she does not treat these things that she naturally does as a woman with any respect. She does not think they have any value. She rarely envisages art as serious work. She is used to idleness, never having experienced in her life the austere necessity of a discipline. She will not be capable of a steady and persevering effort. She will not compel herself to acquire a solid technique. And this kind of stuff is precisely what women gravitate towards and could do really well, but she doesn't treat it with the respect that would be necessary. From childhood, she was taught to cheat in order to please, so she hopes to get by with a few ruses. And this links into the topic of what I talked about, of our life and our career being a little bit of a lottery, because women, we know that if something amazing happened to us, suddenly our lives can change, and we too often rely on that possibility instead of just gradually and slowly, like the man, building an empire. The woman easily plays at working, but she does not work. Believing in the magic virtues of passivity, she confuses conjurations and acts. So often women think that things are just going to happen to us. Seated at her desk, musing over vague stories, imagining that she is a writer, but she must at some point make signs on the blank page. Men don't believe that it's going to happen. They invest a lot of time in the technical, in the method, because that's what male energy does. But female energy, we have no method, because also nobody tells you, because nobody takes you seriously. Whereas with men, they will just give them the set of instructions that they need. With women, they don't even talk to you. They're like, you just do whatever and you have no idea what to do, unless you go to a traditional, university career. But in the arts, it's really, really hard to get that mentorship and that orientation. It has to come from men, because there's no women, and men don't take you seriously at all. Brilliant sentence. Most women do not understand the problems that their desire for communication poses. They believe their worth comes from an inner grace, and they do not imagine that value can be acquired. This is crucial. They don't believe. We don't deeply understand how much self-development can do to us, and that all of the things that men know and know how to do, and the skills, they learn them. For some reason, women, we just think that everything just is already within us. Their worth comes from an inner grace, and they do not imagine that value can be acquired. It's just so true. Instead of constituting their work by a thoughtful effort, they put their confidence in spontaneity. Writing, smiling, success will come or will not. Their luck. This is how women we view the world, really. We don't take things seriously, even relationships. We don't put any work in finding the right man. We just think that it will kind of come or not, and that it's just all a lottery or luck, and even men believe that of us as well. They don't believe that. I have seen this very clearly. Men don't believe that it's worth to educate us. Now, because it just kind of happens in its own momentum. Everybody goes to university. The only reason why you go to university is just, it's become a habit now. They reckon that the book or painting will be successful without effort. They are discouraged by the least criticism. They don't know that error can open the road to progress. This is why they often overreact, which is harmful to themselves. They become irritated and discouraged. We also don't know exactly what spontaneity means. One admires Colette for spontaneity not found in any male writer, but hers is a thoughtful spontaneity. She refuses some of its contributions and accepts others. The amateur, rather than seizing words as an inter-individual relation, sees in them the direct revelation of her feelings. So she doesn't think so much, and to produce a work that is valuable, one must think and choose, not just pour out our feelings and trust that because they are our feelings that they'll be great. That's not how it works, and I had to learn that in songwriting. Her sterile vanity comes from the fact that she cherishes herself without daring to construct herself. So you need to construct yourself, not just pour yourself out. Not being able to forget themselves is the biggest failure, because they cannot abandon themselves to the contemplation of the world. They will be incapable of creating it anew. If you can't see clearly, then you can't create. This is a brilliant sentence. Instead of giving herself generously to the work she undertakes, the woman all too often considers it a simple ornament of her life. So this work that you do, especially when it's artistic work, it just suits you. You don't do it for work, you just use it to adorn your life with it. Instead of enriching the woman, her narcissism impoverishes her. Involved in nothing but self-contemplation, she eliminates herself. If all you do is self-contemplation, there's nothing for others to look at. This is very true, for example, of a lot of, how do they call them? Public figures, they call themselves in Instagram. Or, you know, people who make videos and all they do, they make videos for the sake of making a video about themselves, but they are just for the sake of itself. So there's no content. There's nothing about it. It's just when you get dressed for the sole purpose of showing your clothes, then what are you really getting dressed for? I find it really confusing. Many reasons explain women's timidity. Her great concern is to please. And as a woman, she is often already afraid of displeasing. The writer who is original is always scandalous. I enjoyed this little part about art. What is new disturbs and antagonizes. The woman naturally watches her manners. She does not dare to irritate, explore, explode. This is a really big limitation on us. It's really hard for us to express ourselves fully because we always want to be so careful, because it's just not feminine. I don't know, somehow, I don't know what it is exactly, but I feel it too. I have to constantly remind myself that I need to be myself, and it's so hard because you imagine how people are going to take it, and it's just really hard to just let go. Women do not lack originality in their behavior and feelings. There are some so singular that they have to be locked up. Love that. If they try to write, they feel crushed by the universe of culture because it is a universe of men. Maybe that's why we don't feel like we can be ourselves, because we're trying to be ourselves in a universe that isn't ours. So even though we as people are very, very colorful, we are unable to express that through anything that's meant to be serious, because it just never quite merges into it. It just never quite, the puzzle doesn't fit. Inversely, for the woman who chooses to reason, to express herself through masculine techniques, this will stifle an originality she distrusts. I love this sentence. This reasonable modesty is what has above all defined the limits of feminine talent until now. Many women have eluded the traps of narcissism and false wonderment, but no woman has ever thrown prudence to the wind to try to emerge beyond the given world. So we can't forget ourselves and our place enough to emerge. Even if we're not narcissists, even if we don't have this affected persona, we cannot forget ourselves enough, which is what makes us so awkward. Lucidity, for example, is a conquest they are justly proud of, but with which they are too little, too quickly satisfied. So we are too satisfied by our own advances in lucidity. The fact is that traditional woman is a mystified consciousness and an instrument of mystification. She tries to conceal her dependence from herself, which is a way of consenting to it. To denounce this dependence is already a liberation. Cynicism is a defense against humiliation and shame. They are too interested in attaching this disinterested attitude. And this is kind of where we are nowadays, because she says that when these women pull away the veils of illusion and lies, they think they have done enough. So nowadays we feel we are doing enough by denouncing the bad stuff that's happening, but this negative daring still leaves us with an enigma. Truth itself is an ambiguity. It's what I was saying, truth itself is ambiguous. It's not black or white. It's a mystery. It must be rethought, recreated. So it's not just about complaining, it's about creating an alternative. This is where it all begins. Women are still too preoccupied with seeing clearly to try to penetrate other shadows beyond that clarity. Art, literature, and philosophy are attempts to found the world anew on a human freedom, that of the creator. What women primarily lacks is learning from the practice of abandonment and transcendence. For one to become a creator, culture must be apprehended through the free movement of a transcendence, the spirit to project itself in an empty sky. But the thing is, we're not free, and these are a bit dated examples, but you can think of other examples nowadays. If she lights up a cigarette, if she goes to the cinema alone, an unpleasant incident can quickly occur. She is judged. She must inspire respect by the way she dresses and behaves. There's a certain way to be a woman, and we have to be a woman in that way. So we are really not free, and that's our biggest problem. We're not free to be what we are. Because if we are what we classically have to be, then we are this way. But if we refuse that, then it's not like we're free either. We are labeled the other way. We are never free. And this is a brilliant conclusive sentence. The constraints that surround her and the whole tradition that weighs on her keep her from feeling responsible for the universe. This is the profound reason for her mediocrity. We don't really feel like we are building anything. And when you don't really feel like it is actually happening, you just complain, you don't create. And that's what's happening nowadays. There's a lot of agitation, there's a lot of complaining. Nobody's actually building with any intelligence. Men who we call great are those who take the weight of the world on their shoulders. This is what no woman has ever done, what no woman has ever been able to do. It takes belonging to the privileged caste to view the universe as one's own, to consider oneself as guilty of its faults and take pride in its progress. If you don't feel like it's up to you, you're not going to want to do anything about it. If you don't feel like you're reaping the rewards, you're not going to want to get involved. No woman has thought herself authorized to do that. It's true. We almost seek justification or allowance from men. We often can't even think for ourselves. A woman could never have had the painter's kind of life, the solitude, the cafes, whorehouses, everything that fed him by feeding the sensibility, for example, of Banco. Everything would have been prohibited to her. Even if situations or even if possibilities and opportunities have changed, we still don't have that history. A woman could never have become Kafka in her doubts and anxieties. She would have never recognized the anguish of man driven from paradise. Very good point. When finally it is possible for every human being to place his pride above sexual differences in the difficult glory of his free existence, only then will woman be able to make her history, her problems, her doubts, and her hopes those of humanity. Once again, to explain her limits, we must refer to her situation and not to a mysterious essence. The idea that woman has no creative genius has been defended ad nauseum. But the idea of a given creative instinct must be rejected like that of the eternal feminine. Some misogynists affirm a bit more concretely that because women are neurotic, they will never create anything of value, but these same people often declare that genius is a neurosis. In any case, the example of Proust shows clearly enough that psychophysiological imbalance does not mean powerlessness or mediocrity. She's giving all these arguments that have been posed against women, explaining that they don't really affect whether women should be mediocre or not. How could women ever have had genius when all possibility of accomplishing a work of genius was refused to them? Rimbaud said, "Poets will be when women's infinite servitude is broken, when she lives for herself and by herself, man, abominable until now, giving her her freedom, she too will be a poet. Woman will find the unknown. Will her worlds of ideas differ from ours? She will find strange, unfathomable, repugnant, delicious things. We will take them. We will understand them." Her world of ideas, says back Simone de Beauvoir, are not necessarily different from men's, because she will free herself by assimilating them. To know how singular she will remain, and how important these singularities will continue to be, one would have to make some foolhardy predictions. What is beyond doubt is that until now, women's possibilities have been stifled and lost to humanity, and in her and everyone's interest, it is high time she be left to take her own chances. Thank you for reading. I will come back to you with the conclusion on the next episode.